My name is Matthew Drutt. I am a curator from New York. I'm visiting Kolkata in January of 2020, the new decade, the new millennium. And I came here to visit artists and participate in discussions and conversations with people about what's going on in contemporary art, not only here in Calcutta or India, but have a broader discussion about contemporary art in the global market.
We are, as an art institution, and dealing with a lot of very sensitive artists across the country, we find that there are issues that are concerning us. So since Matthew is here and he comes from New York, maybe he can also throw some ideas and light on this issue about presenting the arts in a global context. How do we do it?
It's certainly true that in the last 20, 15 years or so, the cliche that art was more about money than about ideas or something else has actually become not a cliche but a proven fact. In the old days, wealthy people were patrons of the arts because it was socially responsible. This is about self-interest and washing money. It has become a place to park black money because the art market is a completely unregulated market, unlike banking, commodities trading, stocks, etc. So the problem of presenting art in a global context is only a problem if you don't have money. And it's only a problem if you don't know certain people, because it used to be, at least when I was in academia, they would say it's not who you know, it's what you know. But that's not true anymore. It's really not what you know, it's who you know. And I discovered that the hard way, which I think must be extremely frustrating and challenging for artists and writers and anybody in the creative field who's not interested in all of that sort of superficial socializing and relationships that really have no kind of bond. There are a lot of people out there who know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. The galleries function now as brokerage houses for artists, and they have offices, many of them, around the world.
What about museums? Where do they fall in this?
Well, I think museums who have always been behind in everything. As a former museum person, I feel very qualified to say that.
So I'm thinking of people like Tracy Emin, I'm thinking about sheep and formaldehyde, Damien Hirst, I'm thinking of Chris O'Feely. But they are also incredibly highly valued, but a lot of people find it difficult, conceptual art, a lot of people don't get it. How does the valuation of a Tracy Emin unmade bed happen?
All of this in a way starts with, often it's a champion patron. And all it takes is one big patron.
Yes,
and in this case, it was Charles Saatchi.
It was.
And Charles Saatchi has an advertising company with his brother. So not anymore, but he did in those days. And Saatchi made a name for himself by buying many so-called difficult artists. Anselm Kiefer, the German painter, was considered a difficult artist. Absolutely.
I don't think he's difficult to conceive. What Kiefer has done.
Yes, but they're not pretty paintings.
And
that's the point. And that's the point. And he's dealing with a period in German history that Germans don't like to talk about. First of all, artists like Tracy Emins and Chris O'Feely are very good at playing the game. They're social butterflies. They become a commodity. So it's a brand. It doesn't matter if Tracy Emins forgot to make her bed or left it on, a half-drunk cup of tea. It's all about her sex life. She sold her sex life as her commodity. And so all of these things are remnants of that. And if you buy into the mythology that she's constructed about herself, then what greater prize is there than this bed where she had a really horrible relationship? And it speaks to emptiness, loneliness, pathos. You can actually attach some pretty important ideas to a dumb piece like that. And you ask about an unmade bed, but I would say at the most recent Art Basel Miami Beach fair in December, Maurizio Catalan,
That's right.
was a
yes.
very clever guy, taped a banana to the wall and,
Yes.
and sold not one, but two
Yes.
for the first one for $150,000 and the second one for twice that.
Yes.
You're buying the idea. You're not really. It's no longer about, well, I like this object, I appreciate the craftsmanship and the beauty, and I want to live with it. It's not that kind of exchange. It's that this act is radical.
I remember maybe 4 years ago, Muhammad Hanif was here at one of the Lit Fests, and he said, when I write for my people, I write in Punjabi. When I write for Pakistan, I write in Urdu. But when I write novels, I have no choice but to write in English because that's the only language I can be successful in.
I know for a fact that in India, although I'm not a formal part of the art system, artists forever crib that the biggest impediment to their manifestation of their work is not political freedom issues, which is now circulating in this country and elsewhere, but it's really the gatekeepers. And therefore there's a tremendous tendency to sort of play up to the gatekeepers and say, well, if you think this is going to sell, then this is the kind of stuff I will make. So when my first book was commissioned in 2001 by Orion, which is a publishing company in the United Kingdom, I had my first lunch meeting with my commissioning editor. And very fine editor, we sat down for lunch, and after a while she said, you know what, Kunal, your language, your novel doesn't smell of curry. What does that mean? What does that mean? In a part of me sort of said, but what? I come from the culture of curry, and what you mean, my writing doesn't smell of curry? What she was trying to say is that it doesn't fit into the exact stereotype of Indian writing in English, green mangoes and smell of jasmine and things like that.
In this context, it reminded me of one work by A.Y.Y.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when A.Y.Y. when he writes Coca-Cola
Mm-hmm.
on that ancient it's Han.
Yeah, Han
Chinese-
Dynasty.
Han Dynasty,
Arts, yeah.
So, and then again one day he smashes two urns
Yeah,
to destroy the past.
yeah.
Yeah, so this, why when he writes Coca-Cola on that urn, how would you explain that from your point of view?
Wei Wei is an example of a Chinese artist who, because he didn't smell of soy sauce, became a threat to the government.
Yes.
Because if they were going to bless Chinese contemporary art, it sure as well better reaffirm the popular mythology of what is China. And China is tea and Ming Dynasty, it's emperors and silks and all of these things. It's not, political oppression and one child per family and et cetera, et cetera. So, what did Ai Weiwei do with his career? Having spent some time in America, he absorbed the lessons of Marcel Duchamp, so making art that was anti-art and made from everyday objects and using everyday objects as things that actually became more pregnant with meaning the longer they just stood by themselves without explanation. And by refusing to explain things, they became more talked about as people tried to figure out what they mean. It's a very clever thing. It's like taping a banana to the side of a wall. You don't explain it, and then suddenly it becomes a meme on Instagram, and it's around the world. What better moment could there be for making art than a moment when you can't be sure of what you're looking at? And instead of that being a problem, it's good business because you get followers. And the more you promote it, you become Instagram famous.
Yes.
So I would want you to talk a little bit about the way in which Banksy, do you think he's opted out of the whole sort of depressing setup that you've talked about?
If anything, I think he's capitalized on the whole thing.
Yes.
You know, I mean, what does he do? He still pretends to not have an identity.
Yeah.
The best joke he pulled on the art world was the work that he sold to a collector who flipped it at auction, and while it was on the auction block, the
Right,
image
sure.
went through a shredder that was
shredder,
built
yes.
into the band. Now, I have to wonder, you know, do they really not know that there's a shredding machine inside this thing? Because you handle works of art, especially when they're coming in to be sold. People do a thorough kind of, you know, physical checkup, looking under the hood, making sure everything's put together properly. So I find it very hard to believe that nobody knew this was going to happen. But there it is. It played out as if nobody knew it was going to happen. And in the middle of bidding, this thing shreds itself. Now that's genius, right? Except then 3 months later, I was in Stuttgart this summer in August, walking through the Stuttgart Museum, where there's a great collection of classic modern art. And I turned the corner, and there's the bloody picture, hanging in between two Max Beckmann paintings, on extended loan to the museum. And it's in very good shape for a painting that was supposed to destroy itself.
The tricksters and pranksters and people who are so smart that they can fool everybody, and galleries that are taken in by all of that can fool some investors, and investors can fool other investors by investing more money. I think you've got a great novel in there.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I'm still waiting for
Yes, your next
a
novel.
great,
Yes.
you know, there have been no great films about the art world,
Right.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
And there have been no great books about the art world. So, and it's great stuff. It's really,
You could
you
be
know,
the narrator.
I mean, you experience this thing. Sometimes you're in these situations and you're like, you know, you couldn't make this up. It's so bizarre. You couldn't make this stuff up. Nobody would believe you if you made it up. But here it is, it's happening. And it's incredible.
So many of these big collectors who have given their works to very good establishments and museums. They're recognized, they get the credit for having donated. You know, I found that in Singapore as well. I'm told there are many wealthy people with large collections. Again, their names are there, which is fine. The entire collection has gone into the museum. Now, we had, like say, the Birdlas. The Birdlas have got their own museum with their own personal collection. But if they're private collectors, and many of their works are put in storage, nobody can look at them. So even if you loan it to a gallery or a museum, so that people you can share the works and give them credit for it.
The answer is that it really only happens at the end of the day when culturally, I won't call them cultural leaders because they're not, but people who have high net worth and power, political power, financial power, take an interest in promoting their country's cultural patrimony internationally.
Yeah, this is
Until that happens, nothing happens.